Welcome ghosts and ghouls to another episode of Danica Raven's Bite-Sized Horror. This week I'm pleased to share a good bit of writing from a friend of mine who sent this in specially for the show. This one's called Inheritance by LeVick. If you're sitting comfortably, I will begin. All Icarus Marks had to do was fly to Kanoehe, Oahu, and spend a night in his late uncle's home. He would then inherit nearly $1 million and the home itself. His parents had arranged a flight for him from St. Augustine, Florida, where they lived. The funeral for his uncle was elaborate and ridiculous, much like his uncle was. The flight was long, but he always enjoyed flying. His father always thought Icarus's love of all things airborne was wonderfully ironic, given his name. His flight finally landed at Daniel K. Inouye International Airport. Icarus got his rental car and made the roughly 30-minute drive to his uncle's home in Kanoehe. It was a nice home, but not as extravagant as Icarus would have expected. Icarus went inside and had a bit too large of a dinner for just one person, but he rationalised this as celebrating the life of his uncle and his future riches. Once he spent one night in the house and had the proper paperwork done, he'd be rich. And he'd have property to sell. Icarus fell asleep easily, despite it being an unfamiliar bedroom. Unfortunately, his hearty meal caused him to wake in the middle of the night to use the restroom. Once finished, he returned to bed and lay completely still as he began to doze off again. It was then that he felt pressure against his lower back. The room was cold to begin with, but it had grown colder. Icarus wanted to move, but he found that he couldn't. The pressure was no longer gentle, like sweat sticking clothing to the body. It felt like something was actively pushing against him. Icarus was terrified. He still could not move. Fear had paralysed even his tongue. Worse yet, he could not get his body to respond to his desperate mental pleas to move. He was effectively trapped in his own body. There was a new sensation, a sharp, piercing feeling at the base of his neck. Icarus began to feel drowsy. Despite his adrenaline pumping, he could now see what appeared to be a thin mist hovering towards his face. The mist seemed to contain a face with glowing eyes and a wide, devious grin. As the mist began to engulf his face, Icarus struggled out a pitiful yelp. The mist reacted by whipping itself about his face. It felt like being beaten by a windstorm. Icarus wanted to move, needed to move, but that stabbing feeling in the back of his neck seemed to drain all of his strength. It was like he'd been punctured in his very soul, the horrible, evil wisp slowly lowering itself over his face. Icarus could feel his fear swelling and his energy waning as he was being suffocated. He wished this was just a nightmare, but then again, he hadn't been asleep when it had begun. Icarus felt nauseated. Suddenly, he began to regurgitate, which to his surprise also was horrible for his attacker. The shadowy terror lifted up for a moment and Icarus felt some of his strength return. This was just enough for his adrenaline to allow Icarus to stand from his bed. The horrible thing fled into the floorboards. However, that meant that the horrible creature was still in the room with him. "You're wounded, and there's no way I'm sleeping tonight," taunted Icarus. "All I have to do is spend one night, and I won't let you attack me again." Icarus opted to spend the rest of the night with the light on, refusing to leave the room. "I don't know what you are, but I hate you," Icarus hissed to the creature. He nervously paced the room, and in doing so noticed a trunk under the bed. Rather than search for a key, he took out his aggression by beating it open with a hammer that he'd noticed by some picture frames on the dresser. Inside were magical books and items that belonged to his uncle, including a lengthy letter warning about the creature that had recently inhabited the home. "It says here that you're a demon, and you specifically appear to be very territorial," Icarus said, looking at the black mist, watching him from underneath the floorboards. Tears began to fill Icarus's eyes. This letter's date. It's a little over a week ago. There's some postmarked envelopes in this chest. My uncle meant to send a letter to me, but you got to him first, didn't you? He didn't go peacefully in his sleep, did he? The creature continued hiding under the floorboard. "There's another note, addressed to my uncle's friend, Stefan Neeson." Wow, is that guy still alive? It's been ages since I've seen him. "I'm also contacting his local demonologist, a Mr. Iona, listed here. Perhaps they can find a way to remove you. Until one of them arrive, I'm not letting you out of my sight." Thankfully, Mr. Iona was home and responded to Icarus's phone call. Mr. Iona was able to ward off the demon and agreed that Stefan would likely be interested in some of the contents of the chest. "Do you plan on keeping the house?" Mr. Iona asked. "I'm not sure. That thing, well, it might come back," Icarus replied. "Do you know if you got the inheritance?" Iona asked. "Yeah, there's still some paperwork, but the creep whose job it was to watch from his car to make sure I stayed in the house congratulated me," Icarus answered. "Well, congratulations. Best of luck to you. You should get some rest. If you do decide to keep the house, please feel free to contact me if there are any further problems," Iona said. "Thanks. I think I'll find a hotel. Maybe even demolish the house," Icarus said. Big thanks again to LeVick for sending in his story to us. If you feel that you have the ability to write something, why not send it in? We might get a chance to read it. But if haunted houses aren't enough to spook you, why not give us a recommendation for a story that you like? If you enjoyed the show, why not like, comment and subscribe?